It appears that this IX and DAO Ipose watch is the most controversial watch I've ever featured on this channel. Hello, you're watching James. My name's James, you're watching me, and I am talking about watches. And today I'm talking about a watch that has been causing us a little bit of a stir on my channel and on other channels that have been featuring this particular watch. Now, there is a question about whether this is a homage, whether it's a replica, or whether it is an absolute fake watch. But today, I'm not going to talk about that. Today, I'm not going to be concentrating on that particular question. Instead, I'm going to be concentrating on the watch that is in front of me, the watch that is on my wrist. I want to do a full review of this watch just to show you what I think about it, not about the sort of thoughts about whether it is a homage or not. And I'm going to do that because you may well be wanting to buy this one for yourself, or at least considering buying this one for yourself. And if you do want to buy it for yourself, there's a few spots you can buy it online. I bought mine from Aliexpress, and as such, I'm going to leave one of those affiliate links to this watch in the description below. There are a couple of options, a couple of different dial options, color options, and even movement options. But if you want to get the base sort of model, this basic watch with the PT5000, it's going to cost you around about 390 Australian dollars. And I do want to come back to that price and those options because I ended up buying the one with the SW200 movement, which costs a little bit more. And I'm going to talk about that and the price at the end of the video. For now, I want to flip the camera around and just show you this watch in more detail in a full review style video. So let's check it out. Now on paper, this IX and DAO, or possibly 9-path capacity, that is what the actual name means. There's a few things going for it. Obviously, it's a very cool looking watch in quite a cool box, but it also has 200 meters of water resistance, a sapphire crystal. It has a very incredible looking design, if not an original design, and it's very well built. But it also has some great dimensions. I really like the dimensions of this one. It's almost a perfect dimension watch for me because the case itself is 40 millimeters. It is 12.6 millimeters wide. The lug to lug is 47.6 millimeters. The lug width is 20. And on this bracelet that it comes with, which I really do like, it's 112 grams. Now, I obviously went for the white dial, which actually ended up being a bit more of a pearl or silver sort of look to it. But if you don't like this particular color, well, you can get in a black dial, but you can also get some other variations as well. Different color bezel inserts there, but also different dial configurations. So if you don't like this particular one, well, there's quite a few different ones to choose from. But of course, I'm just going to share with you my thoughts about this particular one because this is the only variation that I've actually had in hand. The dial itself, although, as I said, is technically mentioned as white, I think it's more of a pearl sort of look to it. So yes, this white dial I actually think is more of a pearl or a silver, but there's a fair few other colors going on with this one as well. As you can see on the outer part of that dial is a black sort of track. Now, I initially thought it might have been layered, but I don't think it actually is. It's all the same sort of level. So it's black with a minute track in white. Inside that, you can see then there are other parts to it that are printed on in black, but you can also see that the brand name there, the IX and DAO, down at the 6 o'clock is printed on in black. Then we've also got the 200 meters of water resistance written in red, automatic in black, and this Fabri en China, which I think means made in China. Now, the legibility of this one is awesome because of those black hands on this sort of pearl dial. And they're really well done, those hands. There's quite an interesting shape with that hour sort of arrow hand, long minute hand, long skinny second hand with a lollipop sort of end to it. But they're all black and they have this sort of texture that's been applied to them that looks good even under macro. And as I mentioned, gives you great legibility. You can see that all the sort of lume areas on this are sort of positioned a little bit different to most watches, with the sort of inverted, sort of almost like a Flieger sort of look up there at the 12 o'clock. Those sort of lollipop sort of ends of the hours there, and then sort of battens at the 3 and the 9 there. But then we've got a cutoff batten there to introduce that date window. And the lume on this watch is particularly good, and it looks really cool after dark because of those different positions of those lume pips themselves. And you can also see there is a lume pip up there on the bezel insert. Now, I'd consider this sapphire crystal probably like almost like a double dome, but almost like a bit of a blend with a box shape. You can see it sort of sticks up and goes across a little bit. has a really nice sort of look to it, and I think it suits this style of watch as well, especially when it comes to looking at the crown as well, because this slightly thinner crown, for me, that gives me vintage watch vibes. But then also this sort of slightly boxed style crystal also gives me some sort of vintage style vibe. So I think they work together really well. But one of my favorite parts about this watch is actually the bezel and how it's divided from stainless steel and into black. I like the design of it as well, but I think it just looks really cool, and it's very easy to utilize as well with that coin edge bezel, and the action of it is very nice. In fact, it's really impressive. Has a slightly muted sound and feel to it, but it is very solid, no backplay, no movement whatsoever. As I mentioned with the case, I really like the size of it, and I like how they've finished it. There's a sort of brushing on the top, but then there's these big, wide, polished chamfers that come all the way down onto the fronts of those lugs, which I think looks fantastic, and brushing on the sides. Brushing's done nice and neatly. I'm quite happy with it. I wouldn't say it's the best brushing I've ever seen, but it is actually pretty good. I'm very happy. It's sort of at this sort of price range. It's got an unsigned crown there, and as I mentioned, it is slightly thinner than other crowns that I have seen on other watches, which for me gives you those vintage vibes. It's also a screw down crown, so it gives you that 200 meters of water resistance. Now, I did mention that this one here contains the SW200. I did choose to spend a little bit extra money on this watch to get that Swiss movement, but the SW200 obviously has hand winding, and it also does have hacking. And it'd be quite interesting to see what this Swiss movement inside of a Chinese watch is like on the time grapher and see how it is performing. So let's do that. Let's chuck it on the time grapher and see how this one is performing and see whether it was worthwhile spending that extra money on a Swiss movement. Well, I think I may have made a good decision when you look at these figures on this particular time grapher, because it's running at 28,800 vibrations per hour, which is what I expected. Beat errors are very low. Nice healthy amplitude, and it's pretty much running at 0 seconds a day, and you certainly can't complain about that. So I think I made a good decision deciding to put a Swiss caliber movement inside of this Chinese watch. Now, a nice fairly simple case back, but I actually quite like this style. It's actually got a bit of information on there, it's got the logo on there, it's all brushed, and I think it's simple yet neat and tidy, and I'm pretty happy with that sort of decision by that DAO company. But one of the main reasons for buying this watch is this really interesting strap option, this Milanese sort of mesh strap. In particular though, how it joins in with the case itself, because it has this really interesting lug design, has a sort of piece in the center, which then sort of allows it to sort of pivot and move, but it has that solid end link as well, so it really does join in nicely. You'll see on the other side it is the same, and underneath when we look you can see that it is a solid end link, that it is screwed on, it is made really well. There's absolutely no movement whatsoever of those sort of end links either, but it is really the transition between those lugs and the mesh bracelet that really makes this a bit of a feature. And it is also a really nice mesh bracelet. You can see those little interesting sort of divots there. That allows for this clasp to grab onto it. And it also has this sort of solid piece on the end, which stops that sort of mesh bracelet sort of fraying or sort of getting damaged. So I'm quite impressed by that. I think that's a good option for this one. The little clasp itself also has a logo on it. It is very neat and tidy, and it is something that works and looks really good on this particular watch, and certainly was one of the reasons why I ended up buying it. And it really does look good on my 17 centimeter or around about 6 3/4 inch wrist. Really cool design, if not original. Really cool sort of options in regards to the size, which I actually really like and prefer. And it's just a nice on-wrist experience. Something that I've actually really been enjoying wearing, because it is sort of a dive watch, but then it's got these other features that give it a little bit more elegance than perhaps other dive watches in my collection. So it's been something rather unique and something rather different for me. So what is it that I like about this watch, that I don't like about this watch, and that I would change? Well, there is a lot that I like about it. I like the size, I like the quality of it, I like the design. Yes, I'm aware, not original design, but I do like the design. Love this mesh bracelet, and in particular, I love this feature of how that mesh bracelet integrates into the case. It is really cool. I also really like the decision of this particular Chinese company to put the date window down there at the 6 o'clock and actually have a date window on this watch. Also, that decision about the crown, I think it suits this design. Now, the only thing I really don't like about this watch is the decision to put all the text down there at 6 and then nothing under the 12. Now, I understand they're doing that because it is homaging, replicating, copying the original, But I don't really like that on the original either. I think it'd be better to have a logo up here, or at least move the text back and forth between, so it just makes it feel a little bit more in symmetry. Now I understand that this brand, since buying this one, has actually released other variations of the dial, which does exactly that. So they have made that change already. But what I want to do now is talk about the price a little bit more of this one, because although it's not the main consideration for me anyway, when I made this decision to buy this one over the original, it is definitely still a consideration when making any watch purchase. So let's flip back to me and let's talk price. So for 390 Australian dollars, you can buy this watch with the PT5000. Now I chose to go for the Sleater SW200 version because when I bought this one, I was able to get it for $100 more, for 490 Australian dollars with that Sleater movement. Now this watch is available from multiple locations, and depending on sales and things, it will depend on the price. I'm going to talk about the 390 Australian dollar version with that PT5000 in regards to price, because I think that's probably going to be the one that people purchase the most. And at that sort of price, before buying this one, before actually having this watch in hand, even though I have a different movement, I can certainly say that I think that it felt an okay sort of price. You're getting a very interesting looking watch, if not exactly a unique looking watch. And at that price, I felt comfortable buying it. In fact, I felt so comfortable buying it that I ended up buying one a little bit more expensive with that different movement. When I actually got this one in hand, I felt very comfortable with that price. This is a great watch. I really, really like it. I really like the design. Again, if not a unique design, I like the quality of it and I like actually wearing it. So I was very happy with that price. And that then comes to an interesting point in this sort of conversation about money, because what else would I buy for the same money? Well, the other watch that I'd consider buying, perhaps not for the same money, actually for possibly 3 times the amount of money, is the original watch. And I've actually had hands-on experience with that original watch. And it is very nice. There are definitely reasons why you should consider buying that one over this one. The price alone is not the reason, however, that I chose to buy the Homage of it, this IX and DAO. I ended up buying this IX and DAO because I actually prefer it over the original watch. I prefer the design elements of it in regards to sizing. I prefer the sort of date option of this particular watch. I prefer the movement of this watch over the original. It wasn't purely the price that stopped me buying that original. So for me, I think I made the right decision. If you are considering these watches, you are going to have to make that decision for yourself. And if you are wanting to make that decision and compare the original versus this Homage, well, I've made a specific video about that featuring both watches. So maybe check that video out next.